Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Michael Gianangeli, and I'm a first-year MBA at the MIT. I have the honor of introducing Gabriel Smallman, founder and president of Adept. This panel, which also has my favorite name, Whose Butts Are in Whose Seats, is going to be a great one. I really hope you enjoy it. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gabe.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Good luck.
Hi, good afternoon. As you said, my name is Gabriel Smallman. I've been involved in the digital side of sports for almost 20 years. And maybe the first meeting I ever had in sports, the first conversation I ever had with anyone was somebody sitting me down and going, Gabe, what we care about is butts in seats. That's how we make money. That's what we do here. So if you can do that, then you're our type of guy. And I flash forward, and it's interesting. It's the same challenge. It's the same question. And the technology has changed a bit. I don't know if anybody saw, there was a chat around 11 by the NFL, and the NFL was talking about sort of their entire marketing paradigm from start to finish of how they market and use various technologies to behavioral market, to target, to everything. If you saw that, my presentation is the black box in the top corner where he said, first, identify the user. And then we're going to do all this amazing stuff after. That tiny little black box is identify the user. And that is a critical step, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Because if you don't know who that user is, all of that behavioral marketing, all of that technology you bought, all the database engines, the push notification, the email campaign, this is not as effective, if at all effective. And there are a lot of ways now that people and brands and arenas and stuff have used technology to basically unlock that key on who the fan is. So traditional analytics, I threw up some of the standard stuff. Probably some of that's familiar to you. Traditional analytics was, we want to know how many people used our website. We want to see how many people watched a video. We want to see how many people came back. We want to see where they came from. Did they come from a search? Did they come from a brand site? Who came to our pro shop? You know, what did they buy? How many people came to our stadium? All of those are important, and traditional analytics, though, lacked who are those people? Okay, well, we know they came back twice. These people come 3 times, 4 times, or these are super users. But the key is now to unlock who is that person that is coming 2, 3 times. So we'll move forward, and it's around a concept of exchanging something of value for the user's identity. So somebody gave me a great example the other day. If you walked into a car dealership, and this probably actually happened to you, walk into a car dealership, and the first thing the person does is they run up to you, they say, hi, welcome to Subaru of Northborough. Would you like to sign up for our mailing list? Right? How many people here are going to say, yeah, I'm going to sign up for that mailing list? That's great. Let me stop what I was trying to do and sit here and fill this out. Absolutely zero. And usability studies across the board talk to very analogous things where if you show up at a site and the first thing you get asked for is, hey, join our marketing newsletter, or join this, or do that. Basically, the first thing you're doing is you're telling them, like, ignore why you're here and just give us what we want. And the reaction is, as you can imagine, everybody says, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm here for a completely different reason. So we have to give that person a value proposition as to why you would identify yourself. So there's a couple of common ways that I see brands doing that right now, which we're seeing very positive results on. A good example, a team you may be familiar with, the New England Patriots, instituted a loyalty campaign system. And loyalty is a hot thing in the digital space, especially on the app side. What a lot of these brands are doing around loyalty is they're using loyalty to convert the unknown to the known, and they're returning a value to the customer. So in this case, as you navigate the application, you're going to get rewards. And you see right up here, you're getting points. So there's going to be some kind of currency around that. And sometimes they're called yards, or they're points, or they're something catchy. The concept here is while you're using our applications, engaging with our digital platform, whether it be on the web, mobile web, app, wherever it is, we're going to give you points. Now, maybe I don't want the points right away, but this app's smart. It's going to keep tracking how many points I get. And I'm going to notice down there, oh, look at that. I have some rewards. So at some point, I might hit that magic number and say, this actually has value. If I'm going to give you my name, I'm going to get points, and I can turn that into something. I'll tell you who I am. So they register. Once they register, they redeem their points. You have a happy fan or customer. Great. Okay, I gave you my name, but in return, you're giving me access to the points I accumulated. I can convert them into one of a number of things, a gift card, a fan experience, something special you can't get anywhere else. So now I have a happy fan, and I have a happy brand, because the brand now is identified. Joe Smith is now using the app. Now, once we know who Joe Smith is, then all of those analytics come into focus. We can then move all those analytics into some sort of warehouse, and you can start correlating them. Joe Smith comes to the app 3 times a day. Joe Smith likes to look at the cheerleaders. Joe Smith likes to buy jerseys in the pro shop, right? So we talked a little bit about digital. This also moves outside of the digital realm. So you're starting to see brands do this more and more. Yes, they have a digital campaign. So the 49ers have the Faithful 49, and you earn yards. Now, that's great. You can use those yards at the stadium. You can scan barcodes, get discounts while you're at the venue, all these things. But you can also use this in the physical world at their physical pro shop. You can also gain yards and points out doing things like if you go to bars that are playing the game, and that bar is a registered Faithful 49 bar, you can earn points by showing up at that bar. So again, they're adding a ton of value to giving you the identity. If you give us your identity, you'll gain these yards. We're going to give you all these ways to gain these yards. We're going to bring it out into the physical world so that we can get location data, we can get all these things, we can engage bars, we can engage the physical pro shop. So now, we're starting to collect this data. So we've made a value proposition to the fan to say, hey, here's our value proposition. We'll convert. Now we've learned who they are. So the big question is, okay, what are we going to do with that data? And there's a 1,000,001 companies out there now that are really focused on giving you the marketing tools once you've accumulated that data. So to name a few, you've got Local Analytics, Urban Airship, Kahuna, Adobe, everyone's talking about Spreadfast, Tagboard, Salesforce, all these companies. But the key is until you identify the person and you attach all of that data to a profile, you haven't gained the power yet. And that was what earlier the gentleman was talking about in the NFL. He put up a profile, and they showed this, Joe Smith, and they showed his salary. They showed all his preferences. They showed how he liked to be communicated to, that he engaged in fantasy and everything. And the whole room, ooh, ah, like, wow. Marketers' eyes lit up. They're like, wow, if I knew that about these people, oh boy, could I turn some revenue. But the key is, until you attach Joe Smith to all that data, you got zilch. So in the digital world, this is a fantastic way to attract and then utilize that data. There are a ton of tools out there for doing that. Now, I'm going to transition a little bit because what I've talked about right now is really on the digital side, your digital properties, and how you're going to utilize that data to make business decisions, drive revenue, things like that. I'm going to now transition to the physical world, which is now if we have this data, how can we use this in the physical world at a venue? How can identity and analytics help us make good business decisions in a venue. So how do we transition what we learned that Joe Smith on, let's say, a brand fan engagement app, how do we transition that so that when you arrive at a stadium or some physical location, we transfer that data? So there's a couple ways you can do that in technology. Here's an example of how the 49ers did it. Basically, they've paired this app to their venue application. So once you've paired it, you essentially use a single sign-on, and there are many providers that do back office stuff like that. So you single sign on it. So essentially, now I've learned you're Joe Smith through the fan app. I caught you because you really like those yards, and now you're going to go to a game. Now I know who you are when I open up the venue app. So when I start to utilize the venue app, for example, Venue Next, I can essentially know that you've arrived. Now, let's say you arrive at the venue and you haven't identified. There's still another chance to find out who you are. So we go back to that value proposition. So Venue Next is a leading provider of in-venue systems. And over here is essentially what they're trying to do is improve the venue experience. And this is very similar to loyalty. What we're trying to do is say, hey, fan, if you download this and use this, you're going to get conveniences, you're going to get points, you're going to get a better experience. And in return for that, we're going to collect analytic data about your usage. And then in the end, we're going to be able to give those analytics to the vendor operator and let the vendor operator make good business decisions, both at the venue, but also as a follow-up on marketing. One of the things that I hear a lot is not only do I want to know who's in the seat, but I want to know what games they went to so that our sales and marketing team can follow up when we know a season ticket holder came to a game. And that's a big deal because in a lot of sports now, with the pricing of tickets, what you're seeing is the season ticket holders are often not the people at the games. And the people that come and use those tickets, those are high-value targets for marketers. So trying to find out who actually is at the game is of huge value to them. So let's move through and talk about some of the specifics. So the first step is we have to establish value, right? Why do you want to use this venue application now that I'm here? Well, you can get, you scan your tickets, Game Center, so you can see, say you missed the play, you can see replays from 4 different directions. Merchandise, you can order merchandise and food straight to your seat so you don't have to go stand in line. Loyalty points, well, just like we talked about, in the physical world, as you're using the application in the stadium, you get loyalty points. And a huge push is the ability to use those loyalty points in the venue to buy food. So probably all of you at some point in time have had some airline points. How good does it feel to buy a ticket and not spend $1 for that ticket, right? When you hit that magic number, great, I have enough miles, I can buy the ticket to Hawaii and it's not even going to cost me $1. You get that same euphoria when you talk about points here. So great, I've accumulated 5,000 yards, M points, whatever you might want to call it. Great, guys, I'll buy everybody a beer. And in doing so, we find out who you are, we find out how much money you spent with us. So we've added the value proposition. Now for the other side, the venue side, the operator side, what's the value there? So all of these systems, venues have merchandising systems, they have food systems, concession systems, ticketing systems, parking, you name it. All of these systems generally exist separately. So there isn't a single system for which a venue uses that consolidates all of this. But if you're doing these applications, if you're buying your parking ticket with your app, if you're buying your food with your app, if we know where you are within the venue because of beacon technology, then all this data can be brought together and put into a dashboard so that operators can make really smart decisions. And I'll give you a few examples of ones that you might never think of. Everyone thinks of some of the more obvious ones like, oh, great, how many tickets did we sell? So here's an example of one. In a venue, one of the biggest challenges is you have a very finite amount of time to maximize your revenue. And there's a couple of things that kill revenue. One is lines. That's the biggest one I hear. Oh my God, I stand up, I go to buy a $20 hot dog, and I see a 30-person line. Oh my God, forget it. I don't need that hot dog. It's the biggest problem they have. And in a venue, the biggest problem you have is that everybody wants to get the hot dog at the same time, right? Oh, first quarter's over, got to go get the hot dog. Somebody once told me, Gabe, if I could only figure out a way to change our buying pattern from this to this, because then the lines are shorter, you convert more revenue. So these are the type of analytics and the things you can do. So for example is, let's say you know the line length at every single concession place and every single order delivery place. If you have one that is backed up or struggling, you can reroute order delivery from another one that isn't. So all of a sudden your wait times go down. Happy fans. Now what happens is you've just created like a reward cycle. Great, you used the app. Great, you used your points to order the burger, and the burger showed up in 4 minutes. Total win. Customers happy, vendor and operator is thrilled. So these are the type of analytics. You can see where you have log jams and ticketing and stuff. You know, one of the things that I remember the NFL made a huge initiative about 8 years ago. They were in a panic. Big TVs, huge TVs, were now $1,000. And it was killing ticket sales because people would say, you know, instead of spending $200 in half a day, I have a 50-inch television on my wall. Looks pretty good. So the NFL tried to counter that. They launched a huge initiative around how do we get people back in seats. And their initial feeling was, well, we need technology. We need technology to you know, make the experience better. And they threw a bunch of things at the wall. But I feel like they fell short because they didn't start with how do we add value to the person while you're at the venue? What are the venue pain points? It's, you know, convenience, lines, you know, getting food, going to the bathroom. If you can bring value, if you can improve the experience in those ways, fans will reward you with their identity. And if they reward you with their identity, then you build a tremendously powerful database for which you can behavioral and target and marketing. And the marketing department will then start sending you Christmas cards. So a little bit of results. So I was able to pry these out of Venue Next. Proof is in the pudding. So one of the things they were able to do in both the Levi Stadium and the Amway Center, which is the stadium the Orlando Magic play in, they were able to drive a ton of new user profiles. And that gets right to that thing where I was talking about. They created a value proposition for the fan to download the app and use it in the venue. And in doing so, all of these new profiles, they created tons of data and analytics. And because of that data and analytics, it really allowed them to change how they marketed to people. And very specifically, you can get up into some of the things that they were able to do. And this is just a glimpse of what's possible once you have access to this. So if you take a look up here, the fast break pass sales. So that has to do with some of their season ticket buying and things like that. So when you can observe who's using the tickets and observe their who they're sending to the games, you can build that marketing database. They were able to use all those analytics to really target and behavioral market to the fan base, and with great success. And that the key, you know, if I could really harp on one point, was the key is it was all around identifying the person and connecting that profile, John Smith's profile, to all of that profile data that you've accumulated. And that's certainly a big thing I'm hearing, and I heard it today and I saw it today. People were talking about all of the tools available to you once you have that profile. But the key is, it's all predicated on John Smith telling you who he is, or figuring out who John Smith is in this case. So to recap, utilize a loyalty reward system to identify your fans. Use that loyalty reward as a value. So go back to the Subaru thing. Instead of running up to that customer and saying, "Welcome to Subaru of Northborough. Here, quick, sign up." What they should have done was say, "Hey, why don't you come in? Let me let me take you around. Let me show you some of these Subarus. Maybe the one you want isn't here today. But I'll tell you what, if you give me your information, then I can follow up and tell you when the silver ones arrive. And if you want, I'll drop you an email and you can come back and look at it, right? You got to give them some value for turning over that information. Transition that identity to connected applications. So all you need is to identify them on one platform, and then you need to plan how to connect it with your other platforms. So if you're able to connect through a mobile app and find out who they are, you need to make sure that you've extended that system to your other digital platforms such that that identity can carry over. So you don't want to just know when they use your app. You want to know when they go to your website, your mobile website, your app. You want to know when they come to your physical installations, whatever they may be, your pro shop, your venue, your things like that. Collect and consolidate data from fans in and out of venue. So we talked about that. It isn't just in the digital world, it's also in the physical world. You can collect data, in venue, who's buying the tickets, where they're sitting. Ticketing exchange is a big one these days. So a lot of the leagues now and teams are rolling out ticket exchanges. And there's third-party ticket upgrade providers like Experience and things like that. Those are really key to finding out who they're handing the tickets to. Get access to that data, bring that data into your data warehouse. Finally, build smart marketing around behavior and identity. The tools to do so are really blossoming. I threw up a bunch of names there. There are a ton of other names that you've probably saw throughout this convention. There are a ton of very solid providers that can do this, both from push, email marketing, even print marketing. All of these tools, if you talk to all the big players like IBM, things like that, they are 100% focused on trying to help you build campaigns and automate campaigns around events and marketing and data. So that kind of wraps up my presentation across the board, and it's a great time to be a marketer, a venue provider, or a brand, because I feel like after my first conversation 20 years ago, where I was yelled at, Gabe, it's all about butts in seats. I finally feel like it's come full circle, which is it's not just about butts in seats. It's whose butt is in that seat. And right now, I feel like the digital world provides, and the market has come around to giving people the tools to find out whose butt is in whose seat. Thank you very much. And I think I'm a little under time, so if anybody has questions, feel free to fire away.
Which sports companies think are doing this best and why?
That's a really good question. The question was, who's doing this the best and why? So in various leagues, the technology stack, if you will, and vendors and things like that are very different. So for example, in MLB, it is just MLB. So MLB is doing a very good job. They're very early in wiring up a lot of venues. But on the other hand, in some sense, I think a lot of progressive thinking NFL teams are actually ahead of them. Because, and to cite, I thought a really good line I heard from the director of technology for CBS Sports, the edge always innovates faster than the big entities. And so I think there are some really sharp NFL teams that have pushed that forward and basically tied together a few very sharp vendors out on the edge in technology. So I don't think there's anybody doing it poorly. I think if I were to evaluate who's, I would probably say a handful of NFL teams are really starting to turn that corner. The NBA is really just kind of getting going. It also depends on not just digital technology and stuff like that. It also depends on physical venue. Many venues are so dated that ownership is just never going to invest the money until the ownership changes. And the new ownership, I joke all the time that some teams are, quote unquote, owned by a guy that started an auto parts store. They'll never understand technology. They don't get it. They don't care. And until the team cycles through and you get a new owner that gets that sports teams are really now, it's a digital company. It's a, if you will, it's a software company. It has a physical product, which is a game out on the field, or on the parquet or wherever it might be. But they're really software companies now, and data companies. I hope that answered it.
Does this process apply the same way to, let's say, apparel brand and their events, or are there like other opportunities or challenges that companies like that would face as opposed to a team or a league?
Yes. So, and this is one of the why I love the world of sports. There's no one way. So there are many teams that own their own venue. And I think that is the best setup as far as being able to set up a platform that runs across all of them. But a good example is the Garden. The Garden is not owned by the Celtics, for example. And it's owned by another entity. And they play multiple sports at that. I've seen implementation of that is harder whenever you have multiple parties. I've seen it handled in some ways where I'll give you an example. They'll create a venue application. And that venue application will service anybody that comes to that venue, whether it's hockey, basketball, et cetera. And I think in the next couple of years, what you'll see is you'll see the fan engagement side start to be able to work with and connect to that, so that potentially if you had a venue with 3 sports and none of those teams own the venue, that they're going to start working backwards with whoever the digital partners are. I think the teams or the brands are going to demand it, because they're starting to see when you own the venue and what you can do quickly, and the data is coming back. They're seeing that data going, all right, venue, that's great that you're selling a lot of popcorn for us, but we can make a lot more money if we get a hold of some of this data on who's showing up to our venue.
What are your thoughts on scaling this to like transient fans who's, for instance, I bring a friend.
Yep.
You know a lot about me, but you would know nothing about my friend. Or I bring a family, I buy a season ticket for 4. You would know everything about me because I want to funnel all my points.
Yep.
By, like your friend knowing about the 3 others.
So one of the ways, and by the way, that's really common. If you look at a pattern of who shows up for games from a season ticket holder standpoint, it's like the dirty secret of the leagues. It's rarely the season ticket holder. And in many cases now, because the prices have come up, what you're seeing is those tickets are being bought by entities, not individuals. And so, for example, I work with, let's say I give this guy a lot of business. He's got season tickets. He says, hey, man, I got season tickets. Why don't you come, we'll go to the game and we'll use those, right? So if I'm willing to go to the game, then I may or may not be convertible into a season ticket holder, but I certainly could be marketable to go see another game. And some of the better ways that I've seen is in some of the ticket exchanges that I talked about. So that's why you see leagues and teams pushing so hard for that. Because if you, let's say you're the guy, you say, Gabe, I've got some seats for you, you can go use them. If you said, listen, I have my tickets in my app for the team, I'm just going to transfer them to you. You'll get an email that says you're going to be transferred to. Oh, well, that's really convenient. There's the value, the value add, right, that we talked about, the service. So I get an email, and the email says, hey, he's transferring your tickets. Just click here to create an account. We'll transfer the tickets into your account, and you can just go scan them at the game. What I've done is I've made you happy, because it's easy. You just transfer the tickets, you're done. I made me happy. Great, I'm going to a game, and it was easy. All I have to do is bring my phone, and you've made the venue or brand happy, because now they know you transferred the tickets, and they know me, that I attended the game. And they can market appropriately. So they now can start a profile on me and say, well, look at this. Gabe he comes to 2 to 3 games a year, and he bought a couple of T-shirts. And then they can move me into a certain category and figure how they're going to market me to me. Hope that answered that. Any others? It's hard to see with them. Just raise their hand. All right. Thank you very much.